The first company I wanted to talk about are Turo. So they're part of the sharing economy. They're kind of like Airbnb, but for cars. So I don't know if people have heard of this sort of concept. But if you're a car owner, you can put your car on this platform. If you want to borrow a car, you can rent one off there. It's all peer-to-peer. And they'd actually had quite a clunky system immediately before, sort of about 2 months before we went out there, where the cars had to be fitted with a device, and the device would be auto-locking, and then there was a key thing, and it's all quite complex. And they kind of stopped and looked at their model and gone, this isn't really very consumer-centric, and also it's a bit of a pain. So let's switch that around. And they switched it around in about a month. And I kind of get the feeling that a lot of the businesses over in the UK would have taken a longer to do that. They'd have done a business case, they'd have spoke to their financiers, they would have done a few test cases, and they didn't do that. And it felt like that isn't how they really worked over there. And I think that was true of a lot of the Silicon Valley companies that we saw. But what they really identified is that if you think about the car rental market, the bit that's rubbish is that the photos of cars are terrible. And so they've innovated their model. So if you get their premium service, you actually get a photographer to come out and photograph your car. And, you know, they're in San Francisco, so it's not short of kind of good backdrops for it. They're all out there near the Bay Bridge. And I think that's quite interesting because this market's going to get really cluttered. They're coming to the UK next year. There's already about 3 others that are doing quite well in this space, and that's going to get really busy. But they've identified that they're the organisation that's got a really good user experience, and it also just looks really great. The last thing that I want to say about these guys is that they had real energy and conviction about what they were going to sell. But the guys who spoke to us just absolutely knew that they were going to succeed. They came in, they told us their model, they told us how they'd been financed, and you know they've obviously got that bit really sorted out. But they had so much conviction that this was a great thing and that people were going to buy it that we all walked out of there definitely go in, I'll use it, I'll recommend it to a friend, I'll invest in it, I'll probably want to get their account if they come to the UK. The next company I want to talk about was blockchain systems. The important bit is that Bitcoin is built on the blockchain, and I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of blockchain, mainly because I can't describe it properly, but it is going to change the world. So these are a number of reasons why it'll change the world. But in very broad and prosaic terms, the blockchain is a mathematical algorithm which runs, and there is no answer to it. It runs over a certain period of time, and computer geniuses, find the answer to it to try and solve the blockchain, and then everything stops, and that is set in stone forever and ever, and then it starts again. The bits that are important for us and the world are that when the financial crisis happened, a lot of that was because our markets are built on interdependent trading. And the only way that you can get rid of interdependent trading is to make the idea of trading anonymously with somebody else possible without causing loads of fraud. And the blockchain does that. There's obviously issues with this, and one of the good things about the meeting is that we said, isn't this going to be just used by criminals? And he kind of went, well, yes, of course it is, because criminals lead the world in terms of technology adoption, but then other people follow. It's amazing, and if I was going to say to you to do one thing, go away and read about the blockchain and then buy some bitcoins, because I have. The next one is a company called Influential, which was part of the Paradigm meeting we went to. Convergence and reintegration were major themes for me for the whole week, and I think that these guys were a very good example of that. So the whole world of kind of makers and content production, and how brands can work with people who are channels, and they're also brands in their own right, and influencers, find all that really, really interesting. One of the reasons that I like the stuff that they do is because they've created a platform which is mobile first. It reaches out to thousands of people who are making content, so influencers, what we used to call YouTube stars, but now that's obviously very sort of old-fashioned, and it's much broader than that. And they're able to connect brands with makers in a really easy way, but in a way that's sort of quite refined and sophisticated. So you can find somebody who is a good ambassador for your brand based on reach, which is obviously really important, geography, demographics, but also on brand personalities. So we're actually meeting the guy that's right over in that far corner. He's called Jeetendr. And he's a really cool guy. So he's actually a Brit, he's an expat. And he's a brand expert, a celebrity branding expert. So he does lots of things, sort of teaches at university, is on loads of talk shows, and he's pretty much the world expert on how influential people are in the celebrity space. And he was there to talk to us about celebrity branding broadly, but there was one specific point that I thought was interesting to bring back. On the right-hand side there, you'll see the Variety magazine list of the most influential celebrities. I think this is actually from 2014. And the ones that are in blue are the kind of YouTube stars, so people who have become famous from only doing stuff which is made content that they've delivered themselves. I think we could tell through the rhythm of the week that we're having that there is a real interest, especially with millennial audiences, around those being the celebrities that are important to them. And we talked about, with the changes in advertising regulations, and now that we need to be really clear when somebody, so a maker, is putting a message out there which is sponsored by a brand or which is funded or is essentially advertising, and it needs to be really clear on that, and some people have got into a bit of trouble with it. Is that not going to undermine this whole thing about authenticity? And is that going to mean that it's the end of using these people as brand ambassadors? And his response was really interesting. And I guess I buy it, and I'm sort of thinking about my audiences now. I think it's probably right. The people that made these guys stars are of the same generation to them in broad terms. And what they really like about them is that they're self-made, they're getting out there, they're making their own brand, they're making connections in the world that are going to make them famous, profitable, succeed. They're part of the get paid generation, and they don't care that these guys are getting paid. I think the other thing that is on this is that we talked a bit about convergence, and one of the things that Jeetendr spoke about a lot is this kind of transitioning of YouTube stars into mainstream channels. So there's a bit of a desire for them to sort of, be on TV, be on the TV morning shows, etc. And that's done to sort of varying degrees of success. But at the same time, we're also seeing our traditional celebrities making, homegrown YouTube programs, and they're doing fly-on-the-wall documentaries. And there's a whole convergence of things going around sort of video media in the broadest sense. So, TV, YouTube, broadcast, Insta video, Snapchat, there's kind of emerging, and I think that they're thinking about things, or the makers and the consumers are thinking about things in a much more fluid way than we perhaps are as planners. And I think that probably is something that we need to sort of race ahead a little bit on.